Wait, you guys had a trick, which was put it behind me. Okay, that looks okay?
Yeah.
Pretty decent? I mean, you think this would hit? Like, do you think that matters?
You can just put it a little further over if you're worried about it.
Yeah, I'm just... this is like my job.
You can pin it on the inside of your shirt if that helps.
Yeah.
Do you want me to do that?
Yeah, just do that.
My job is constantly rearranging lavalier mics, but not vampire lavalier mics. Are you like this?
Yeah, let me just hear real quick. Kind of move around and just talk to Chad like you would normally.
Hey, Chad, I was going to the store the other day and I saw some lasagna on sale for like 99 cents.
I mean, it's
99 cents.
Not really rustling or anything.
You think it's okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, 99-cent lasagna? No, probably
It's
not.
pretty good. Okay, I'm just paranoid. Okay, I'll shut up and I'll start the show, right? You ready?
Yeah, ready.
All right. Welcome to another episode of Anyways. We're coming to you from the lovely downtown Memphis. I'm Ben. This is Chad.
This episode is brought to you by Cutter. It works very well to at least keep mosquitoes about 6 inches away from your body.
Yeah. There's literal clouds of mosquitoes revolving around us as we speak, because we've talked into the night, and we're here to discuss episode 2 of season 3, which is called "I Am Not the Fine Man You Are Looking For," and it opens with a hooplehead talking about all his misfortunes and falling to his death off the hustings where they were going to have the election.
He basically recounts his story of him moving to Deadwood and then losing all of his money, and he owes a whore $9 or something. I think when he says that is when he trips over the platform and falls to his death and breaks his neck.
And I think, like a lot of letters in the show, I think this one is also based on a real letter. Like it's not a famous person; it's somebody who wrote, and they wrote something similar to these lines. And this guy, instead of writing it, he just speaks it.
And I guess it's supposed to be that this is something that's weighing on Al's mind, like these sort of concerns or something.
Well,
because it literally is keeping him awake.
Yeah,
This guy saying this stuff.
Well, it's almost like Al has a dream about a hoople. Like his ability to have empathy for his fellow man is awakened.
Yeah.
And so it looks like he's rising to get up, and then it cuts to the hoople, and then when it cuts back from the hoople having broken his neck, Al is fast asleep and then waking up for the day, and then we cut to everyone finding the corpse and thinking Hearst killed him.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very strange. It's another small editing choice that is strange, and then there's this image of Johnny wearing like pink pajamas with his ass out the back of him.
That's my second note. We get to see Johnny's ass.
Yes, but also Dan with suspenders over like a naked chest and a rifle and a gun in either hand. Like he couldn't shoot the rifle, I don't think, without.
Well, he could figure out a way to do it.
Yeah, but it's just like kind of this lovely morning image, and I don't know.
Oh, very quickly before we get any further, I would like to point out that Ben made several misstatements last time. The weak tea moment is from this episode.
Oh no.
The talking about Richardson hatching from an egg is from this episode. And the speech where he says to rise up and murder Bullock is from this episode.
Well, should we just edit?
No, I like the idea that it's just forever codified and people were like screaming at the screen at one point, like during the last episode, and then they get to tune into this one and be like, oh, they know.
Yeah, I'm really sorry about that. I watched the two episodes.
We watched them together, so yeah.
Yeah, for the pandemic purposes, I'm not going into the building over there, so I watched the 2 episodes back to back before I came here, and so they have similar plots.
Well, no, it's reasonable. They're basically just bleed together.
Yeah, they're the same. They're the same plot. But anyway, I tried to work against that, so I've failed completely. So do you want to discuss those things again? Would that be help? Would that be backup insurance?
Maybe.
Okay.
We could possibly do that. Okay. Other major things. Alma's either going to die or lose the baby. Those are 2 choices. The Psy religious thing is really like excruciatingly painful in this episode.
This is where Andy comes to
Andy
visit.
shows
Psy.
up, yeah.
And it's a moment where Andy seems really dumb. Like it's like when you were talking about last episode about the idea.
There are certain people that are extremely stupid, and they're everybody else above them intellectually. Yeah.
And like, why would he go place himself in the place where basically a mafia lord has? We don't see any of his sharpshooters this season, but like he has people ready to kill you.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
he-
it's reasonable to assume they could just he could have you killed instantly. It was like,
Yeah.
why the hell would you go in there?
Yeah, and his stated purpose is, I forgive you, and I want you to forgive me.
Right.
And then of course, Sai like pulls out a gun,
And he starts screaming about Jesus and oh yeah, and then Leon comes in and
and then he just starts.
He starts preaching to Leon and being like, hey, you need to what's something you want to give up? He's like, dope. I want to give up a dope. He's like, get down on your fucking knees. And he starts pointing the gun at him and it's like, and ask Christ to fucking take this away from you.
Well, no, Leon settles for it. He's like, Leon, what would you?
Cut back.
What?
Cut back on
Yeah,
dope.
he's like, less dope.
Mhm.
He'll settle for less dope. And
And then that's when Sai's like, he's gonna cut way the fuck back.
And so maybe it's meant to be funny.
Yeah.
But it's also meant to be maybe Sai has lost so much in his deal that he just forgets about Andy and killing him. Andy's just like, I'll talk to you later, Sai.
Well,
and just walks away.
I think also it's supposed to be him making fun of Andy to his face and like, this is what your profession is. It's bullshit. And I don't think he had any intention of actually killing Andy, just scaring the shit out of him. I don't think he really wanted to go that far with it. But it is funny that in the beginning part of the scene is when he's acting very horribly and trying to like convey a true sense of belief that he's gained, but it's an obvious act. And then this part where he's overacting and like just chewing up all the available scenery. This is the real Sai. This is the Sai who's just a psychopath and wants to have a big
And he has this beautiful
sideshow.
lock of all while he's sick. He has this beautiful lock of hair that falls wonderfully across his brow, so he looks like an actor.
Yeah.
He looks like and watching Powers Booth is amazing. He's amazing. Also, as a completely total aside, I watched a little bit of the show Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which he did before he died, which is incredibly bland use of him as a villain.
Yeah.
And he died just before he could return to Deadwood, which is an utter tragedy. And also, I don't know how we're supposed to take it, because it's just, it comes across as so theatrical that anybody who would believe in the words he's saying would be incredibly dumb. And
Yeah, and Andy is dumb.
yeah. No, but Andy he's a card sharp.
Yeah.
He's a smart guy.
Well, he's smart. He's smart in a way, but I wouldn't say he's incredibly intelligent. I don't think he has. I mean, I'm not going to use that stupid ass saying, street smart or whatever.
I don't think he's supposed to be taken in. Like, he seems to be taken in by Sai.
Yeah.
And I think that's very strange.
Well, he seems to be taken in by him, I think, because it's the religious thing, and he's like, oh, okay, he's had his come to Jesus moment too, and it's like, well, I guess that's believable to me. I had mine or something.
Yeah.
But he knows Sai well enough that he should know his fake voice.
Well, there's a moment where he realizes when Sai pulls the gun, he has a moment of fright, but it's just like that moment. It's like, are we really supposed to be like, oh wow, Andy's been? It seems very
it's
false.
obvious. It's obvious. Let's just get all the Sai stuff out of the way.
Yeah.
This is a great thing when Joni comes in there in the first time in the episode, and she starts talking about how she wants to kill herself. Hold on one second. They're everywhere. So Joni comes in and says that she wants to kill herself. And Sai is like beyond disappointed with her, and he basically says, you want to kill yourself because you're not feeling useful and you're not gainfully employed. That's why you want to die.
Yeah.
And you're turning from your gift and your training.
Yeah, that made me think of Anakin. It's just like she's rebelling against again, within the storyline of this series.
She's kidnapped.
She's kidnapped when she's 14 by Sai and forced into prostitution.
Yeah. And her response to this is, when you speak, it sounds like the devil is speaking to me, to which his response is he drops his register even lower than his normal speaking voice, and he says something, I can't remember, but the thing that really hit me was just him going like, and he just lets this like low like grumble out,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's
again,
good.
I think when we discussed this with Jordan, we talked about this as the moment at which the series is the most heavy-handed in laying on the suggestion that Sai is the devil. But it's an amazing quote, and it's one I always remember.
Yeah.
And it's delivered. She's basically like, I'm under his thrall.
Yeah.
But it is at the same time, it's a realistic portrayal of the way in which somebody who, he's in a fucked up way who he is her dad.
Yeah.
But he's also her pimp.
Yeah.
And she has a very, very abusive relationship with this guy.
Right.
And it's very, again, like her performance, Joni Stubbs, Kim Dickens, is, again, it's a little bit weird for sometimes being so offset from all the other characters.
Yeah.
And it's a little theatrical, sometimes her depression.
Well, it's difficult too because she's tied up in the only other character who is not ever really a part of the main story after
yeah.
Maybe midway through season 2. I'm having trouble remembering some of this stuff now.
Yeah.
But Sai kind of becomes sort of irrelevant, and then they have to figure out something to do with him.
Yeah.
Aside from that, and then this Andy stuff happens, and they basically just be able to put Powers Booth in a bedroom set for.
Yeah. Maybe he was sick. He did have a chronic illness, but it's just yeah, you compared him once to a G.I. Joe villain. And the fact, I think that you mean that he's ineffective. He has these henchmen, but he doesn't really do anything.
No.
Nothing ever changes.
No. And so, the problem is her character is tied to that. And so she's always going to be outside of the main story because her shit is tied up so intrinsically with Sai.
Yeah. And he never develops, never changes, never shows an empathetic motion. It was planned eventually, in his coffee table book, he says, Sai Tolliver will become the biggest feminist in all of Deadwood, but of course, that didn't happen. There was no season 4.
Yeah.
But that would have been a major turn for
Sure.
him to show any emotion.
Yeah. For him to, just.
Yeah.
Be a
I guess we're
genuine
going.
person.
I guess we're in spoilers. Sorry about that. We're a little bit in spoilers, but it's not really that much of a spoiler to know that he died before the movie was completed.
That's outside of anything.
Yeah. You don't get to see Sai have a very nice emotion. I also want to make a personal note for the viewer. There are literal clouds of 15 to 20 mosquitoes that are swirling around our persons all throughout we're talking. So we're not like Leon suffering withdrawals or like Alma or other people. We are literally battling mosquitoes. Yeah.
There's so many. I've killed 6.
Yeah.
Okay. So that basically finishes off Sai. I don't think he has anything else in the episode. Let's see. Why don't we finish off some of these smaller bits?
Well, there's an important bit that I would like to touch on, which is another episode, another mention of how a character, this time Dan, would like to go across the street and draw his knife across her throat.
Yeah, we're gonna. That's the main thrust of the episode.
Okay.
I was gonna finish up some of the smaller
Okay.
side stuff. This isn't really a side thing, but Alma's storyline's pretty straightforward in this episode. It's okay, she has to do something to save her life or, whatever with the baby. She disappoints Ellsworth when she tells him that she's going to leave the running of the mining operation to Bullock instead, and that obviously hurts Ellsworth's little heart.
Yeah.
It has something to do with Hearst.
It has to do with that Hearst will come after her holdings through Sophia. Say Sophia is not able, really shouldn't really inherit it, and thereby she'll try to get the claim.
Sure, and so Bullock can be a
is
little
better,
more impartial, whereas
Ellsworth has an emotional attachment to all the
emotional
people who
attachment.
died in his
Yeah.
minds, and also Bullock is better situated. Also, she loves fucking Bullock.
Exactly, that's the real thing, and that's what Ellsworth knows, even though that's her reasoning for why she's doing it. But it's honestly just because she likes Bullock.
Yeah. Again, in terms of fiction, not just Deadwood, I dislike drug addiction storylines and pregnancy storylines.
Yeah, they're really lame.
Yeah, because it requires the actor to kind of lay still and act hurt and suffer, and then slowly, there's no way for them not to slowly get better except skipping time.
Well, and the other problem is that it's formulaic as fuck, and it's just boring. There's nothing really, there's no interesting advancements really that are happening. The funniest bit, and the only thing that was really that interesting, was Doc Cochran trying to get the lighting right in the room to where he used these mirrors and bounced light into Trixie, who was the stand-in. She was the stand-in vagina
Yeah.
for Alma, and so she's sitting on the table like this. And he's
With
like,
period appropriate, like black and white, bright leggings. These very distinctive leggings.
Yeah.
And she has no shame or no
"Oh,
body
why-
shame.
Why would she?
Yeah. She's just like, and he just is very calmly saying, wider, wider. And then Ellsworth is in the background with another mirror. Like there's
Yeah.
two mirrors.
Yeah, they're using the mirrors to bounce back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do the surgery. I don't know.
Yeah. Wait, the surgery happens in this episode?
Yeah, it happens in this episode.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, because Bullock sends Utter to watch Ellsworth as he's at the speeches. Yeah, okay. And then we get a really great, one of the best speeches in the series between Utter and Joni.
Yes.
But I guess we could save that for important section.
Yeah, this is that's a more important section. When we can finish out Joni and stuff there too. We got Cy, Mose and Jane, and Miss Bullock. Well, that they're all tied up together. So
Jane takes a bath.
Jane takes a bath. Mose asks if it was by petition from the fucking camp or whatever.
And then he wants to sit and talk to her. Like, I think when she has her, either when she has her speech or while she's taking her bath, I wasn't too clear.
So it's a little confusing, but it's confusing because he's sitting outside the door and then asking if he can listen. And for a second you're like, is he talking about right now? Like while she's taking a bath? It's like, this is fucking weird. And no, it's talking about because in Deadwood they take 50 times the words to say the thing you can say with one word.
Yeah.
They also completely dance around a subject so much that at times it's like it's too confusing what they're trying to say. And even in a little thing like that, it's like, because the writing doesn't want to be like on the nose and him just ask her like, hey, can I listen to you tomorrow? He has to then like omit 5 essential words and then fill it in with useless nonsense.
Yeah. For characters that are like on the like far periphery of a like D plot.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, yeah, it's like an E plot, but yeah. And then she ends up coming in to do the talk with the kids.
Yeah.
Talks about Custer.
James, the kid,
James
presents some problems.
Keeps interrupting.
And then she shuts him down.
She allows him to speak his mind while still being like, is that okay with you, James? Can I keep going? He's like, yeah. And she is able to do a thing that I think she wasn't confident that she could do, which was, number 1, talk in front of a group of people. Number 2, it's kids.
Yeah.
And she did it very well.
Not curse. And she was able through. She was like, "Why'd you call him Armstrong?" I called him Armstrong because it's a kind of a puffed up name.
Puffed up.
And then the previous episode, she's like, Custer was a cunt, and it puts her more in line with the real life Calamity Jane, who was a performer, who was very comfortable in front of crowds.
Yeah.
And this is maybe like the origin of that.
Sure.
Calamity Jane. But I don't remember anything else about the classroom scene. The children have a great time, and Calamity Jane spends a day not drinking. And it's pretty good.
Yeah, she has a good day. And Mose gets to listen to the door.
Oh, he does.
Out by the shitter.
Yes.
Or he's told to sit out by the shitter. Let's see. What are the other?
We talk about
Harry Manning has to take a shit.
Harry Manning is about to give a speech.
Yeah.
And
one of the side characters,
Rutherford, or the shit stirrer, is in his bar and timing the amount of time that his stomach will be so, and it's apparently 14 minutes. Every 14 minutes his stomach gets so upset he has to go take a shit.
Yeah.
And then he still seems pretty uncomfortable when he's on the stage, and he can only like mumble a few words and then just say graveyard needs moving and run away. And it's a pretty successful comic bit. Harry Manning's cool. Okay.
Yeah, that's it for Harry Manning.
I've got a dead mosquito just smashed perfectly. Did not mean to kill it at all.
We can talk about Farnham.
Yeah, let's talk about Farnham. I made a mistake, and we talked about him a little bit. This is the episode where he says, were you not egg-attached, as I presume?
Mother's love equals murderous hate and revenge.
Yes. Yeah, what we call mother love is really a desire for hatred and revenge. And puberty will bring him to
Puberty. Richardson, who is 25 years older than Farnham.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a classic.
I think I said everything I wanted to say about Farnham last episode, but I just want to say Farnham in this episode, let's just talk about his speech too.
Sure.
He gets on to the stage, and again, he doesn't get subtlety.
No.
He only knows that people are anti-Semitic.
And so he's like, whoa, and showing like how big Saul's
His
no
speech is literally just a series of racist puns against Saul Starr, who's Jewish.
Yep.
And then Saul returns the favor when he gets up there and he's like, you won't have to use a miracle to part the creek. I already just bought a house here. And so he's like referring to like Moses parting the Red Sea, but it's just like,
so he's trying to lean into it.
yeah. And it kind of works.
Yeah.
And that's like a hopeful thing. Like Deadwood is, in real life, Deadwood did actually elect Saul Starr as mayor. So like there was like, and there were Jewish people in Deadwood more than Saul Starr. And so, you know, though there's no record that the actual E.B. Farnham was anti-Semitic. Yeah.
What else with that? I mean, they're looking through that hole in the wall.
The hole in the wall?
Yeah.
Like which one?
I'd like
Hearst?
to. No, Farnham and Richardson.
Oh,
They're looking through a hole in the wall or like a peephole. I can't remember.
Because Bullock's rushed to the hotel to talk to him.
Yeah, and he says, "Uh-oh," and then Farnham just berates the living shit out of him.
He's like,
about,
why? Uh-oh.
Why? I'd like to use this ointment to suffocate you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Asshole.
And yeah.
I mean, good speeches. Go back and watch them. There has to be a supercut somewhere online of all the Farnham speeches, right?
Yeah.
I would assume. So,
They're increasingly about how he wants love, and
Yeah.
he doesn't know how to express it.
Okay, let's move on. Moving on up.
Oh, we have an escalation. Do you want to talk about the escalation with Hearst, with the
With Hearst and the sea creature looking cocksucker.
yeah, the guy who said Parp last episode, who's a really cool looking Pinkerton.
Yeah.
He's a good villain. He's gone in this episode. But they, you know, yes. When we talked about before, online and in person, Hearst is behaving like the Riddler. Like he's
Yeah.
like, he's sending them a note to make a show of the fact that he can have 2 dead men. He doesn't even care. He can just throw away men.
Yeah, it's basically an apology for having those dudes killed in his bar. And he's
Yeah.
like, okay, well now you can basically have those 2 dudes, but it's also a backhanded thing because now he has them being witnessed by the other 2 having killed 2 people.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
as with most things, Hearst, it's give with one hand and take away
I
with
never
the
took
other.
it as an apology corpses. You know, like, hey, here's some corpses. These are the guys. We can murder the guys who murdered the last people. But I think that's amazing. Like, I didn't know that. I just took it as, we're going to try to kill you again, but I'm just going to send you a diagram because I'm just dastardly.
I mean, that too.
I'm a snidely whiplash villain. You know,
Well, because here's the thing: if he wouldn't have been smart enough to figure it out, he would have just been dead. So it's like, you know, in a way, it's an apology if you're smart enough to figure it out.
yeah, it's like, here's these guys, the Pinkertons, you can kill them.
Yeah.
But it's just like, again, the Hearst changes as a villain, and in this, it's just a weird thing. And then you have Johnny afterwards and Dan, and they're like talking about what it all meant,
Yeah.
and how Hearst is a smart guy and Al is a smart guy.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Can we talk about Hearst and?
Can we talk about the most important person in this episode, Adams?
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, he's the most important motherfucker.
What does Adams do this episode?
He finally completes his 27 episode long arc of trying to buy this fucking house. It's like they just needed to have him something to do in the background. So much so
That he complains.
That he complains to Al in this episode that he's like, "Why am I doing this?" He's like, "This is such a big waste of time."
And he's upset that he was away from when the murders happened.
Yeah,
He
'cause he
literally
wanted-
says, "I want to be part of the murders."
Murders? Why wasn't I part of the murders? And it's a funny commentary that I'm sure the actor at the time
It's based on the actor's frustration with the show.
It was finally like, this is kind of silly. Can I have like an actual plot?
Yeah.
And it comes out in the art.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but it's like, and eventually he got his own show, Bosch, and then they prevented him from being able to come back for the movie.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and he went through a divorce in season 2, and then he thought that he was wasting his time in this bit part in the show. But again, from my perspective, and I'm sure from your perspective, being a part of the ensemble of Deadwood would be like a top, like that. I would like not stop talking about that for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Like, it's just absurd to think of someone saying, well, I really want to lead. I don't know, but I'm not a professional actor like Titus Welliver.
Sure. Move on to Al and Merrick.
Okay.
They have a brief thing in this episode where basically Al comes into Merrick's shop and is like, look, you're going to print the fucking debates are on tonight. And then that's when Merrick is basically like, look, I'm tired of you fucking telling me what to do. He's like, he finally stands up for himself. What I've been complaining about him for the entire fucking show is that he just rolls over.
Merrick, you've pointed out that Merrick, among Al's henchmen, is not used to it.
Yeah.
He always has a protest. And
Yeah,
I forget what he says in the scene.
He will protest to something lightly and then give in, usually because Al manipulates him, as he does in this scene. Basically, he tells him, you're going to do this, and then Merrick is like, look, you can't keep telling me what I need to print. And then Al basically says like, well, I think because he's trying to say something about being impartial. Merrick
yeah, and they have a conversation about wartime and suppressing the news in times of war.
Well, and he also says like, well, Merrick, did the Angels just drop this fucking printing press off to you, or did you buy it? Buy it for a reason because you wanted to have something to say. And it's like, so you're trying to say something too.
Which I feel like he's saying basically he's saying that Al's business interest is controlling the newspaper, and but then Al rejoins with he's not so pure. He has a monetary motive.
Sure.
But it's kind of like a terrible.
Oh yeah.
Because Merrick is saying I hold to a higher truth.
Yeah.
Like I have a standard that I want to print what's actually going on in the fucking camp.
Yeah, but then Al is saying that it's like, well, it's like it's your fucking opinion, basically.
Yeah.
You have a slant that you want to get out there. I have a slant that I want to get out there, and it's like,
well, but,
that's why you started the printing press in the first place.
Okay. One, I want to tie this to Emily Todd Vanderwerf at the AV Club wrote a series of recaps, and one of those recaps ties Deadwood to when it was made, which is the Iraq War.
Yeah.
It started in 2003. Deadwood started in 2004, and she reads into Deadwood a lot of Iraq War commentary, and I think there is.
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of a blatant one where he says, "Are we at war?"
Yeah.
And he has a few more questions about it. He's like, "What's going on, Al?" And Al is is busy with his plots, doesn't give a fuck, has no respect for the Fourth Estate.
Yeah.
And so what happens is, Al has this argument, which I think is a bullshit argument, because he's like, it doesn't matter that anyone knows what's going on.
Yeah.
I just need to manipulate the paper for my purposes.
Right.
And this ties into the Iraq War, which we had and like the largest demonstrations up until that time about don't go to war in Iraq. It doesn't seem to have anything to do with anything. Why are we start and basically there was no anti-war movement in the press of the U.S. The U.S. did not actually really, there was no visible, not a really serious, basically the U.S. aided and abetted our government in starting a war when it wanted to.
Yeah.
And I think you can take Deadwood very minorly.
Yeah.
And Al is the hero, and he just bulldozes Eric. So it's like, that may be my own stuff that I'm taking to it. But anyway, I like that interpretation of that scene.
And then in the end, he throws Merrick a bone and says, well, what time should they be?
Oh, yeah.
Which is like the most minor of
Merrick
fucking
gets to
things.
choose what time. And then Merrick, like a little puppy, is just like, "Aww."
Okay. I think we can basically get to the main thrust of the episode. Which, is the note which we've talked a little bit about. That then ends up leading into a second note that is delivered to Al after he figures out the first cryptic one, and he has been asked to come on Hearst's veranda,
Yes, yeah.
as Dan cannot figure out what the fuck that is. That's why he's reading it. And they're like, what is, he doesn't have a veranda. What the hell is he talking about? And then that's when they go outside.
Yeah.
And he's knocking out a hole in the fucking wall on the second story and makes himself a veranda.
Yes. And, you know, Dan and Johnny bring up the possibility that maybe you should bring one of them along as a guard.
Do you need a second?
Yeah.
And they're like, his second's going to be there. Sea creature looking motherfucker. Cocksucker. And
Al overplays his hand.
yeah, literally.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but I mean, he does raise a good point when they're like, no, you should bring somebody with you. Well, it's like, well, but that looks like I'm starting something then at that point by it's an escalation. Whereas they're like, well, he's going to have his person there. It's like, yeah, that's where he is. Like, that's his place. It would be like if Hearst came over here, you guys are already here. It's like, so it does make sense. It's just probably stupid, and he should have been like, I mean, now I don't fucking trust this guy. This guy's a fucking psycho.
Yeah.
So I need to bring at least one person with me to help out in case shit goes south, which it does.
Yeah. And I think, like, in this series, it's like Al is meeting finally a bigger fish.
Yeah.
And somebody who is more worldly than him.
Yep.
And Al lorded it over everybody. And then he's meeting this guy who's just like, doesn't really, I don't know. It's also an instance of Al being kind of dumb. You know, like.
He's being overconfident and prideful and thinks that, basically thinks that Hearst would never do anything to him. We're becoming fast frenemies.
Yeah.
And so, like, why would he do that at this point? And it's like, Al, what the fuck would you do? I don't know, take somebody's fucking finger off or what? You know, it's like basically the same shit that happens to him is what Al would do normally.
Yeah, and the show makes a weird, one of these kind of like incremental, small, subdued episodes, a weird choice, which is it doesn't show what happens to Al's hand.
Yeah.
It just, you see that Hearst brings it, I forget what type of instrument it is, but he brings it down.
I think it's like a chisel or like some sort of hammer that on the back side has like a, you know, one of those kind of scoopy
like
bits.
a curved stabbing
Yeah.
thing. And but you don't see what happens to Al's hand, and then you just see Al looks hurt. Everyone looks at him and says he looks hurt. But it's just like, I think and again, very minor spoiler for the movie. In the movie, they flash back to this moment and they show a insert shot of a hand being severed, and as if they were remedying the fact that
the finger being severed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
but it's silly. I'm gonna reapply.
yeah. You're witnessing people who really love Deadwood so much that we're battling
You want some?
a tremendous amount of mosquitoes.
It's a horde.
It's a horde. Oh God.
I'm pretty sure one of them said it's 11 to me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh! I just touched my thermos with my offhand. I'm sure it's okay.
Offhand.
But I feel like one thing that earlier seasons of Deadwood delivered that the third season doesn't, and is that they gave you some really gross stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like at this point in the earlier season, Bullock and Swearingen just fall off the balcony.
Yeah.
And we're taking a lot of care to take it slow and dignified. And so even in this grisly moment, there's just this kind of subdued thing. And it's not sexy, it's not thrilling. It's just kind of like, let's make Al look small, which we've done before with his kidney stone. But
Right. But in
I
a
don't
much
know.
more impressive way.
Yeah.
I agree with you. This should be like a momentous kind of moment, and it does have a great build to it, but the actual moment itself doesn't have enough time to linger,
Yeah.
or isn't really treated with enough respect or something.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
And also, I want to make a point about Hearst, which is that Dan, again, makes the point, which forever after, people on message boards are always asking this question, specifically the Deadwood subreddit. They're like, why don't we just go kill Hearst? And in this episode, Dan is like, he says basically, I think, draw across the throat. I forget which.
Walk across the thoroughfare and literally just slit his throat.
Yeah, and Al's response is another iconic line, which he says, change ain't looking for friends. Change calls the tune we dance to. And then he goes on about adapting and changing. And again, it's in line with this idea that Al, his goal is he wants to be a respectable businessman. He has an increased empathy for others and a lessened desire to kill other people for his own personal gain for money. And you tie that in with the historical fact that Hearst was not murdered in Deadwood. And you tie that in with he's one of the most famous people, one of the most powerful people in the world. He's surrounded by Pinkertons. But the show doesn't make it visually clear why they don't go across. It regulates it to another line of dialogue in the subsequent episode, in this episode and the last. And for a lot of viewers, for years afterwards, they'll post a question: why doesn't everybody kill at Hearst? And it's a fair question. I mean,
it would also be like a fair question, like, why don't we go fucking kill anybody? Like, it's like you could literally show up to Jeff Bezos' house and fucking ace that dude if there was 20, 30 fucking people that showed up.
Or change the system so that person did not have his whims control our methods of living,
Well, but changing the system's different than just showing up and killing somebody.
I know, but like metaphorically, Hearst is like this. Hearst is like the ultimate Satan in the series.
Exactly.
And
that is the real heart of it, is that it's not about the literal nature of the fact that you could go kill Hearst, because then somebody else shows up and who is just as bad.
Yeah.
Because that's the point, which I think some people have tried to act like people overreach in Deadwood when they start talking about like capitalism and like I've read some of this online, and it's ridiculous. Of course this fucking show is about that.
It's an anti-capitalist show.
Yes, it is. I mean, like, obviously. So I don't know.
Yeah, later in the series, Al says that if they killed Hearst, his shareholders would come in and replace him. And so that's another reason given.
Sure.
But what this series is missing at this point is it needs a visceral, visual, or metaphorical. Someone should attempt and be shot down, or
Sure.
because it doesn't come across in all this language.
There should be so many Pinkertons around the hotel or something, and Al could have gone out, like, basically took them to the front of the door and been like, "Do you know that guy? Do you know that guy? Do you know that guy?" And they're like, "No." And it's like, "They're all Pinkertons, dude. We walk over there, they're gonna fucking ace us."
Yeah.
It's like,
and eventually,
it's simple.
And eventually, towards the end of the series and the season, you do see crowds of
exactly.
Pinkertons.
They do finally show up.
But it takes a long time.
But it should have been immediate.
Yeah. But it's almost as if Milch wanted to make a more dignified show,
right?
More period normal show.
Well, and also probably was more concerned about the thematic stuff than necessarily like worrying why they can't just go over there and fucking kill him. It's like, even though that's all that's going to be on most people's minds, because that's where most people go, is they just think about plot, which is like a pretty basic way to look at film or TV or whatever. It's like the plot is there to facilitate the themes and the ideas behind the movie. Is like, who cares if he can literally go over there and kill him?
Plot holes are frequent.
Plot holes happen constantly, and they're funny to make fun of on YouTube or something and make a whole show out of making fun of plot holes. But
like Cinema Sins.
Yeah, exactly.
Which actually makes up plot holes.
It does.
It's very strange.
It makes up plot holes and is a bullshit show. But that is like the base, like lowest common denominator of like talking about. So like you notice, like when we're talking about the show, we use the plot to then get to the messaging and the point and the characterization in the show. We only use the plot as a guide to get us from A to B, We're not just sitting here talking about plot holes in the show or whatever else.
In Buffy, there's a season 3, there's an evil mayor played by, I forget the man's name, but he's really great. He's a bunch of stuff. And anyway, I think they have a stated reason. I think they do try to kill him, but it's a comparable situation where they spend, and it may be confusing my Buffy villains, but there are a lot of Buffy villains who spend there's a big bad, just like Hearst is, and Hearst has often been called a big bad, I think, again, by Emily Todd Vanderwerf or somebody, but basically these villains always end up on one set.
Yeah.
And they sit on that set for the entire season until the finale when they can be defeated.
Yep.
And it's
That's
just a function of the filmmaking. And,
Yeah.
and you hire an actor, you present a plot, and you wouldn't have a show if they defeated the enemy.
Right. But it is hilarious that it's usually like Power Rangers or whatever, like Rita Repulsa and Goldar or whatever the fuck. They sit on that one set on the moon or wherever the fuck it is, I can't remember, and they just go "Rah," and wring their hands, and that's basically what Hearst does too.
Yeah.
I mean, he sits in that one fucking room and just waits for people to come to him.
Yeah, and and I think we talked last time. I wasn't too clear, but there is another version of there's the two versions of John Hammond in the Jurassic Park the novel and the Jurassic Park the movie. The evil John Hammond and the John Hammond who just like likes to play with dinosaurs and accidentally gets everybody killed. And there's a version of Hearst where he's just like just fucking around and having fun, and then he gets everybody killed.
Yeah.
But, I feel like we have at least one more big thing to talk about.
I mean, there's their conversation outside on the patio or the veranda or whatever.
I mean, they just
but
we got a
it's-
gun pointed in the back of your head, and then they take him inside and cut off his finger. I don't remember if they.
No, I mean they don't really do that. They end up back inside, and then the gun or whatever. Basically, it's a really long, drawn out thing where Hearst is basically telling him like, you don't understand how things are going to start working soon, asshole. Is like, we are the same in a way or whatever. It's like, except I'm fucking higher up on the food chain. It's like stuff that we've talked about before.
Yeah.
Um,
I want to talk about Joni and Charlie.
That's right.
But first, I also want to talk about Lila, the prostitute who was revealed that her drug addiction problem is really bad. She disappears from the series in this episode with no explanation of what happens to her. Joni yells at the prostitutes. This is her last episode, at least
Yeah.
according to IMDb. I checked before we started. And she's introduced as the hot young prostitute. She seems pretty cool, and then she gets addicted to drugs, and then Joni comes in and is very angry that she's succumbing to drugs.
Yeah.
And then she cleans her up in this episode, takes her out, puts her on the street, in a nice dress, and she's barely standing. And she's like, nothing's ended yet, or she says something like nothing's ended or nothing's changed.
Yeah.
And then we never see her again. And I guess her scenes got deleted. She's the daughter of the cinematographer for 19 episodes.
Yeah.
And she just got tired of showing up, or
Maybe.
they just wrote her out or deleted her scene where she died. But
Maybe, or I think it kind of works too that way.
it's just like, it's
She
not a
just-
big deal that she died.
Well, I mean, she just wanders off into the street and probably did die or something, and it's like, but she's a fucking junkie. That's what's. gonna
Well, it's just
happen.
how all the side characters are treated, the
Yeah.
Hoopleheads, the normal people,
Yeah.
you and me, the people who aren't
Right.
running the town secretly through
Yeah.
like a fucking Midwestern mafia,
Yeah.
are just used, addicted to drugs,
And then tossed out.
and dead. Okay, let's talk about Charlie Utter and his message of mercy and kindness, not only for everybody else, but also for yourself.
Yeah.
My favorite thing about this speech, Joni is suicidal, depressed, and she walks up to Charlie, and Charlie, he's watching over Bullock's or Alma's surgery, and
Well, Mr.
he's like me in Deadwood. He relates everything to his friend Wild Bill.
Well, Bill, he doesn't think very highly of himself neither. But does that mean you don't like Bill that much because of how he felt about himself?
And she's like, met Bill the once. So
But he keeps going back to it, and it'll just be like, yeah, you met him that one time, but like, what did you think about him that one time? It's like, he seemed like a good guy. He was a good guy. Yeah, you're right.
And he brings back his idiom, be judge, jury, and every member of the court
Yeah.
on yourself, which
Yeah.
he used before last season. And I think it's like, it's silly because he's like, she doesn't know Wild Bill well enough to think highly of him, then to be shocked that he thought poorly of himself.
Like within the same sentence, he's like, well, that's fine. You didn't really know. But
Yeah.
it's like,
So Charlie,
would it shock you to know that he didn't like himself?
but the message still works.
It does.
And
It
she
does
still
work.
says like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't be so hard. Maybe I shouldn't kill myself for being abused when I was a
Yeah.
kid. There's this idea that's almost, that again is very, it's not, it's a very redemptive idea for all the villains of Deadwood, including serial killers
Yeah.
and horrible people. and also innocent people like Joni who have
Yeah.
been like fucking treated.
Yeah.
And it's a very positive, almost quasi-Christian message, which
Yep.
is just like, everybody can be redeemed. Just gotta not hate yourself.
Right.
And and it's a good thing. It's a really great speech. And
It is.
one of the best speeches in the series.
And then it has the most awkward hand-holding moment at the end of it, where Joni, her arm is just down like this, and he like fiddles with her wrist and keeps trying to like pry her hand away, and she finally just relents and lets her arm up so he can hold her hand.
Again, like it's written as if Charlie has a crush.
Yes.
And but it's like they only talked that one time, and then she was like, "Go hang out with your friends." They had like a play date at Farnham's thing where they drank coffee together.
Yeah.
But it's just like, like it's just a weird thing. But I really love that scene, and I like the idea of Charlie Utter, through simple dignity, communicating to Joni that she needs to have some self-love or
Yeah.
some self-respect.
Yeah.
And forgive herself for her faults.
Is that it?
I guess that's it. Thank you for watching our show. We are covered in mosquitoes. We'd like to thank Stephen Hildreth, who filmed this entire thing, and Kate, who came by. And we'd also just like to say, thank you for watching. And I think after this, we'll return to our regularly scheduled filmed stuff. We'll have Jordan back, and we'll be in the past. We'll be before the pandemic for the rest of the series. So won't that be great? Anyway, this is awesome, and thank you, and and we're done.
Buck-toothed beaver slapping logs. You can't keep the gold from me.